I know. Please rise in body and or spirit for our opening hymn filled with loving kindness. May I be filled
with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May I be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Linda Billings. I'm president of the UUSRQ Board of Trustees, and I want to welcome everybody, members, friends, and visitors. And over live stream. I forgot to mention people on live stream. Sometimes I'm on live stream. We're glad you joined us. You're invited to participate in any of our events. And if you have questions, we'd love to tell you more about Unitarian Universalism. Just register on our virtual guest book, found by a link on our website, uusrq.org. You'll also find a sign-up sheet for visitors at the welcome table outside the sanctuary. We'll send you our weekly newsletter and links to virtual and in-person events. And I want to mention a special event today. The Rainbow Alliance is having a potluck lunch in the Reeb Room after service at noon. All are welcome, and if you didn't bring anything, come anyway. We always have too much food. And please remember our veterans on the Memorial Day weekend. And for other events coming up over the next week, look at the insert in your order of service. We celebrate this loving community that we are creating together.
Another head held slowly, charted slowly taken, and the violence caused such silence. Who are we mistaken? What you see is not me, it's not my family. In your head, they are fighting with the tanks and their bombs and their bombs and their guns. In your head, they are crying. In your head, choo, 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 choo. Another mother's breaking, heart is taking over. When the silence causes violence, we must be mistaken. It's the same old thing since 1916. In your head, they're still fighting with their tanks and their bombs and their bombs and their guns. In your head, they are dying. In your head, zombie, zombie, zombie.
One and only Rivera. Thank you. Good morning. I am Reverend J. Wolin, the settled minister here at the Unitarian Universalists of Sarasota, and it is so great to be present with all of you today, both here and online. Our opening reading is an excerpt from the book Proverbs of Ashes by Rita Nakashima Brock and Rebecca Ann Parker. Violence denies presence and suffocates spirit. Violence robs us of knowledge and life and its intrinsic value. It steals our awareness of beauty, of complexity of our bodies. Violence ignores vulnerability, dependence, and interdependence. A person who acts violently disregards self and others as distinct, obliterating the spaces in which spirit breathes. We can resist and we can redress violence by acting for justice and being present to one another, present to beauty, present to the fire at the heart of things, and present to the spirit that gives breath to this life. Now, as we light our chalice, let it be a symbol of the fire at the heart of our soul that yearns for peace. As we light the chalice, as Catherine lights the chalice, please join me in reading our value on interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of existence, all existence, for the great web of life, and with humility, we acknowledge our place in it. We covenant to protect Earth and all beings from exploitation. We will create and nurture sustainable relationships of care and respect, mutuality and justice. We will work to repair harm and damaged relationships.
Good morning. Today's story is The Day War Came, written by Nicola Davies and illustrated by Rebecca Cobb. The day war came, there were flowers on the windowsill, and my father sang my brother back to sleep. My mother made my breakfast, kissed my nose, and walked me to school. That morning, I learned about volcanoes. I sang a song about how tadpoles that turned at last into frogs, and I drew a picture of a bird. Then, just after lunch, war came. At first, it was just like a spattering of hail, a voice of thunder, and then all smoke and fire and noise that I didn't understand. It came across the playground. It came into my teacher's face. It brought the roof down and turned my town to rubble. I can't say the words that tell you about the blackened hole that had been my home. All I can say is this: war took everything. War took everyone. I was ragged, hurt, and all alone. I ran. I walked over fields and roads and mountains in cold and mud and rain. I rode on the back of trucks and buses. I went on a boat that leaked and almost sank, and then up a beach where shoes lay empty in the sand. I ran until I couldn't run anymore, until I reached a row of huts and found a corner with a dirty blanket and a door that rattled in the wind. But war had followed me. It was underneath my skin, behind my eyes, and in my dreams. It had taken possession of my heart. I walked and walked to drive the war out of myself, to find a place where it had not reached. But war was in the way that the door shut when I came down the street, and it was in the way that people didn't smile and turned away. I came to a school and I looked through the windows, and they were learning all about volcanoes and singing and drawing birds. I went inside, my footsteps echoing down the hall, and I pushed open the door and faces turned to look at me, but the teacher did not smile. She said, "There is no room for you, you see. There's no chair for you to sit on. You have to go away." And then I understood that war had gotten here too. So I turned around and I went back to the hut and into the corner in the blanket, and I crawled inside. And it seemed that war had taken the whole world and all the people in it. The door banged. I thought it was the wind, but a child's voice spoke. "I brought you this," he said, "so you can come to school." It was a chair for me to sit on so I can learn about volcanoes and sing and draw birds and drive the war out of my heart. And he smiled and he said, "My friends have brought theirs too, so all the children here can come to school." And out of every hut a child came, and we walked together on a road all lined with chairs, pushing back the war with every step. In the spring of 2016, the UK government refused to give sanctuary to 3,000 unaccompanied child refugees. The author, Nicola Davies, heard about a refugee child being refused entry to a school because there wasn't a chair for her to sit on. So she wrote and published this poem, which is this book, in the Guardian newspaper. And in the days that followed, hundreds and hundreds of people posted images of empty chairs as symbols of solidarity with those children who had lost everything, had nowhere to go, and no chance of an education. Their actions spurred change and gave hope for a better future for refugees. When those in power stop seeing their opponents as people just like themselves, it is so easy to justify war and violence as a means to an end. Whether a war is motivated by greed or national pride or in defense against aggressors, whether it is just or not, it is the children who suffer the most. The innocents who neither perpetrated actions to cause war nor were asked if they were willing to give up so much. May those in power to stop war remember that. So now I invite any children and youth to join me in the West Wing to learn more about Memorial Day and ending conflict with an art project. Thank you.
Sometimes I lay under the moon and thank God that I'm breathing. Then I pray, don't take me soon, 'cause I'm here.
Loved and lost. We hold their names and their faces in our mind's eye. We recall the gifts they gave to us, the strength of their being, the depth of their love, the courage of their dying, and the fullness of their living. In the holy quiet of this hour, their names surround us, and they live with us in blessed memory. If you have a family member who died during service, I invite you to shout out their name as we remain together in silence as a tribute to all that have meant so much to us and are now gone. So in a world where conflicts rage and questions of war and peace weigh heavily upon our hearts, we are reminded of our shared responsibility to build a more just and compassionate world. As we reflect on the moral challenges of war today, let us also act to create peace in our community, in our hearts, and in the world. And so each month, on the fourth Monday, we give away 100% of our offering. So whatever you give today, 100% of it will go to ASALH. And so I want you to know a little bit about it. And so I want to invite up my friend, David Wilkins, who fights this war for education every day in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. So I promised Jay it'd be less than 3 minutes. I'm going to talk fast. Again, good morning. Thank you all for the opportunity to briefly describe ASALH and the Freedom School. ASALH, is the poster behind me shares, is the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. It's about a 110-year-old organization founded by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, father of Black history. Some of you know the name. hopefully you know Black History Month, and our branch here in Manatee and Sarasota is the largest of the 50 in the country. Our mission, quite simply, is to promote, research, preserve, interpret, and disseminate information on Black life, history, and culture. The Freedom School is a project of the branch, modeled after the freedom schools that emerged in the 1960s Freedom Summer Civil Rights protest. Our branch organized a school to offer African American history, recognizing that the political and cultural attacks on the teaching of Black history were designed to eliminate that history from the instructions in our schools. Two quick anecdotes. You ask why. A Black mother who happens to teach at a South County public school met her daughter after school, and the daughter said, well, we learned in class today, my teacher in history told us that Martin Luther King had never really been assassinated, that he's alive someplace in America today. Anecdote 2, you all have heard about Bending the Arc. I know you're familiar with the program, the Boxers of Diversity initiative put on. My wife Lois and I were chaperones in that wonderful program. The Alabama Civil Rights Trail with the 20 high schoolers. Had a dinner conversation with one of the high schoolers, and I asked him, so what are you learning in your American history class about American slavery? And he was told by his teacher that she wasn't allowed to talk about that in school. So that's why we're doing Manasota ASALH Freedom School. So on behalf of the children, families, and teachers and our volunteers, many of whom are your members, some of our best volunteers I saw here coming in this morning, I thank you for this wonderful offering. As I reflect on the completion of our Freedom School's 3rd school year, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share this important history with our community, grateful to witness the increasing interest in our work, and lastly, I'm grateful to the wonderful UU of Sarasota. Thank you, bless you, indeed.
Thank you.
Our next reading is from Reinhold Niebuhr, Moral Man and Immoral Society. A realistic analysis of the problems of human society reveals a constant and seemingly irreconcilable conflict between the needs of society and the imperative of a sensitive conscience. This conflict, which could be most briefly defined as a conflict between ethics and politics, is made inevitable by the double focus of moral life. One focus is in the inner life of the individual, and the other in the necessities of humanity's social life. From the perspective of society, the highest moral ideal is justice. From the perspective of the individual, the highest ideal is unselfishness. Society must strive for justice, even if it is forced to use means such as self-assertion, resistance, coercion, and perhaps resentment, which cannot gain the moral sanction of the most sensitive moral spirit. The individual must strive to realize their life by losing and finding themselves in something greater than themselves. And now one last time, Rivera. Last time for today, here.
We are here for all of us. We are here for all of us. That's why we're here. Why we are here. We are here. Bumps over Baghdad, trying to get something we never had. Let's start with a good dad. So real but it's so sad. And when we're burned in this incest, we're gonna pray for the innocent. Cause right now it don't make sense. Right now it don't make sense. Let's talk about Chi-Town. Let's talk about Gaza. Let's talk about Israel. Cause right now it's real. Let's talk Nigeria in a mass hysteria. Yeah, our souls are brought together so that we can love each other, brother. We are here. We are here for all of us. We are here for all of us. That's why we're here. Why we are here. We are here. No guns made in Harlem, but yet crime is a problem. He wanna shine, wanna rob him. Single murder, where they come from. How we gonna save the nation with no support for education? Cause right now it don't make sense. Right now it don't make sense. Let's talk about our part. My heart touch your heart. Let's talk about living. Had enough of dying, not what we all about. Let's do more giving, do more forgiving. Yeah, our souls were brought together so that we can love each other, sister. We are here. We are here for all of us. We are here for all of us. That's why we're here. Why we are here. We are here. We are here for all of us. We are here for all of us. That's why we're here. Why we are here. We are here.
served during the Vietnam War as a Marine. And let me tell you, you don't say anything bad about the Marines to a Marine. And stay standing, that is. My great-grandfather fled persecution in Lithuania before World War I. Had he stayed, he likely would have perished in the Holocaust. And this really does influence a lot of the concept of just war for me. World War II often represents our clearest example of just war, stopping genocide and aggression from Germany and Japan. Yet even with all of what was happening with Germany and their invasions of other countries, their murdering and the genocide of Jews, which we did know about, even that, we only entered the war after Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. And if we are honest, World War II is really just an extension of World War I, whereupon the humiliating and onerous terms of Germany's surrender after the ending of that war planted the destructive seeds for World War II, a lesson that we learned. So after World War II, we helped build up our former enemies, who are now, at least until the last year, were some of our closest allies. Now, of course, it's easier to judge wars in hindsight. Caught in the moment's passion, we often struggle to see clearly. I remember to this day when terrorists attacked on 9/11. The Twin Towers. I lived in New York for many years. I'd taken the subway under that building. I went to school near it. I know people who died in it. And although another path might have been possible, I knew it would happen, and we did. We chose a vengeful 20-year campaign of war. And I think our mindset was the same as after World War II. We wanted to help rebuild these countries and help them become Western-style democracies. But we forget the scope of the resources poured into and the life lost in World War II, and the utter destruction of Germany and Japan, both of whom surrendered unconditionally. And I can have a whole sermon about why and whether we should have used atomic weapons to end the war in Japan. But it led to utter destruction. We did not have the same resources and commitment to Afghanistan. We have a whole other sermon I could give about why we should not have gone into Iraq, but that's another whole sermon. But it is part of this war mentality that this country has had literally since before its founding. But these modern conflicts raise the ancient question: what makes a war just? Religious traditions have long grappled with this tension. The Hebrews, depicted in the Jewish scriptures, believed their early wars were justified based on their covenant with God. And from the first until the mid-20th century, in which the state of Israel did not exist, much of the rabbinic literature spoke of restraint in war. I would say that whether justified or not, that restraint now seems to be gone in Israel. The Greek philosopher Aristotle wrote about the virtue of war. He said that war should never be an end unto itself, but rather a means to an end. He writes of war is only for defensive purposes, and, quote, is not right to be cruel towards anybody, and people of great-souled nature are not fierce except towards wrongdoers. Interestingly, the Christian scriptures themselves are focused more on nonviolence against oppression than violence. As a matter of fact, many of the teachings of Jesus are about nonviolence, right? So many of those teachings, which are also in the Hebrew scriptures, by the way, to love your neighbor, to love your enemies, and to turn swords into plowshares. However, once Christianity merged with the Roman Empire in the 4th century, the concept of just war took precedence over the teachings of Jesus. First with Augustine and then refined by Thomas Aquinas in the 14th century, the concept of just war has continued to be adapted. The criteria to go to war included just cause, comparative justice, competent authority, probability of success, last resort, and proportionality. There are also theories about how wars should be fought and how wars should end. There's extensive writing on all this. Yet with even all of these doctrines, right, looking back, we know that the Crusades and many other wars of aggression started under the banner of Christianity do not fit under these criteria, let alone Jesus' teachings. Islam scripture, similar to Judaism, has a duality between peace and war. Right? The word jihad means struggle. Now, in most cases, it is used to describe a spiritual struggle. But it also does speak to armed struggle, and is known as the lesser jihad. It too has its own code of conduct, including showing mercy and not harming women and children, which we have seen, unfortunately, in the recent past, has not been followed by Muslim extremists. But I also quote the Quran. It says, and I quote, "Whoever slays a soul as if he slew mankind altogether, and whoever saves the life of one is as though he saved the life of mankind altogether." Hindu scriptures are not ambiguous, but also carry a duality. An important part of Hindu philosophy is the value of ahimsa, or nonviolence, which in recent history we have seen advocated by Mahatma Gandhi in India's struggle against British independence from Britain. And yet their sacred text, the Bhagavad Gita, one of their sacred texts, clearly speaks to the need to follow your duty even if it means going into a just war. Buddhism's sacred texts and practices promote peace and rejects violence. In the Dhammapada, it states, and I quote, "They are not following Dharma or Buddhist teachings who resort to violence to achieve their purpose, but those who lead others through nonviolent means, knowing right from wrong, may be called guardians of the Dharma." And even so, despite this, we know that Buddhist monks fought for Japan in World War II and were involved in the attacks on the minority Rohingya population in Myanmar. So it seems clear to me that when religion is connected to politics or the government, it tends to be co-opted by that government. Thus why we have had such a strong position in this country up until recently about the separation of church and state. The recently deceased Pope Francis, understanding the nuance and talking about the war in Ukraine, stated, and I quote, "We can no longer think of war as a solution because its risk will probably always be greater than its supposed benefits. In the view of this, it is very difficult nowadays to invoke the rational criteria elaborated in earlier centuries to speak of the possibility of a just war. We are called to love everyone without exception. At the same time, loving the oppressor does not mean allowing him to keep oppressing us or letting him think that what he does is acceptable." It's very interesting. All these quotes use the male involved in war making. I'll just point that out. But that is really the challenge to it, right? When somebody is doing something wrong, you can't just let them continue to do that to you or to your country or to your friends, right? Post-World War II, Russia invaded Eastern European countries, and we did nothing to prevent it. Now, there are some who will look back at that time and see it as a very prosperous time for this country. Instead of investing in the war industry, we invested in people, housing, and infrastructure. But by doing so, we abandoned half a continent to suffering. We became wealthy as a country as others starved and died. So, and that is really the crux of the problem. How do we as Unitarian Universalists respond? Our relationship with war has always been complicated. The Transcendentalists, who we really look back on as many of our founders, were on both sides of the argument. Many were children of the United States Revolution, and so they believed in revolution, violent revolution, to achieve their victory. Many, though, some like Henry David Thoreau, acted with civil disobedience in protest of the Mexican-American War in the 19th century. And at the same time he was doing that, abolitionists in Unitarianism, there was a group called the Secret Six. This is Theodore Parker was one of those, a minister in Boston. 5 of the Secret Six were Unitarians, 2 were ministers, and they raised money for John Brown for his violent work to end slavery in Kansas and for his raid on Harper's Ferry, which was a catalyst that led to the Civil War. The 27th and last Unitarian president of the United States, William Howard Taft, was president of the General Conference of Unitarians during World War I, and he came out in strong support of the United States war effort. This caused major strife in the religion, causing a number of ministers to leave or be forced out of their pulpits if they did not agree with war. Subsequent to that, although there have been major disagreements about wars within congregations, Unitarian Universalists as a whole have consistently supported conscientious objective status, working for peace. We created the Unitarian Service Committee, and we sent people overseas at the beginning of World War II to bring mostly children, but other as well, intellectuals and scientists and other people out of Europe during the beginning of World War II. We sent Waitstill Sharp was a minister, and his wife as well were 2 well-known ministers, and that was the start of our Unitarian Service Committee. Unitarian Universalists, though, for those who may be newer to Unitarian Universalism, from the mid-'80s, our principal called us to affirm and promote the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Now, if world community is our goal, then we must engage with the world's complexities, not retreat from them. But what if justice requires something other than peace, right? That is the nagging question. And in 2010, our General Assembly of Congregations, Unitarian Universalists passed a statement of conscience entitled Creating Peace. It asks that our commitment to creating peace call us to the work of peace building, peacemaking, and peacekeeping. Its theological underpinnings are the fundamental unity and interdependence of all persons, human freedom, rejection of moral dualism, humility and open-mindedness, and the use of cooperative power. And it states, and I quote, "Justice concerns the fair ordering of human relationships, including social and political relationships. War signals the breakdown of the fairly ordered human relations," end quote. So this statement of conscience is over 2,500 words long. I encourage you to read it in its totality, and reading it again this week before the service is a good reminder that just because we live in a world that is violent, we can and should promote peace in ourselves in our congregation and in the world at large. We have to offer the possibility of peace to people so they can choose it as an option, to remind them that it is possible to work for peace. I think right now in this nation, we are fighting a war for the soul of our nation. I do not particularly like the war metaphor for social ills. I think of the phrase, the war on drugs. Naming is so important. Imagine if that had been called the war on ending addiction, right? How would that have changed our approach to it? And so, just as likely, I would like to say that how we name this, right? Peace building, right? And actually work for peace and have peace, work for having peace in our hearts. But what happens when one side in a dispute doesn't have the same community moral standards as someone else? We see that all the time, right? What do we do? I can only look to the past of others who have faced these same struggles. Martin Luther King maintained his hope by appealing to the heart of those who opposed him. King still, though, called out clearly the evils of war. He pointed to the connection of spending on war and the increase of poverty, and pointing to those connections, stating a true revolution of values will soon look uneasily upon the glaring contrast of poverty and wealth. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death, end quote. I think of the Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who I studied under, who during the Vietnam War came to America to let people know what was happening to the people of Vietnam. He said he did not blame the Viet Cong for his country's troubles, but rather the people who were dropping the bombs, which was the United States. As soon as the village was destroyed by American bombs, Thich Nhat Hanh and his group of disciples would get together and rebuild that town immediately. That was his way of working for peace. So let me be clear. I do think the majority of Americans, shown the truth of the violence of segregation, wanted something changed. I think as more and more atrocities came to light in the Vietnam War and the lies of politicians told were uncovered, more and more Americans wanted something changed. But I also want to point out when Martin Luther King Jr., when Thich Nhat Hanh were preaching nonviolence, there were other factions preaching violence, if necessary, to achieve the same ends. Whether it was Malcolm X, the Black Panthers, the Weather Underground, or the Viet Cong, there was a clear option. Change at the hands of violent means where many would suffer, or change at the hands of those who believed in powerful and peaceful transition. And we need to continue to preach the gospel of love and peace so there is a voice that can come to the table that calls for a society based on our values of non-violent, even if it takes civil disobedience, but still being non-violent. We need to be clear we are at war for the soul of our nation. It is currently a violent war being waged by the forces of greed and violence. When you are cutting Medicaid benefits, when you are cutting food stamps to give a tax cut to the wealthy, that is a war on poor people. We have a choice. We can either curl up and hide with our head in the sand and never come up, and we know from a long history that will only stave off the future for so long. But quoting 20th century German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, we are not to simply bandage the wounds of the victims beneath the wheels of injustice, But we are to drive a spoke into the wheel itself. It doesn't mean that we don't bandage up the wounds of the victims, but that is not enough. Each group, each organization and person has their role to play. Although some will eventually succumb to this war by engaging with violence, we are called to hold up our values to point to a third way, a middle way, a way where every person is valued, where every life is valued. It is possible. No war is just, but some wars must be fought. Unitarian Universalism has a long history of standing on the side of those who are most vulnerable. And so, as Jiminy Cricket said, let your conscience be your guides. May love lead the way, but we must enter this spiritual war for the soul of America. May it be so. I invite you, thank you. I invite you to rise and by the Andor Spirit for our closing hymn 162. Going to lay down my sword and shield. Down my sword and shield, down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Thank you. That was fun, no matter what. Go now not in search of conflict, but with the courage to face it when justice demands. Go not with hate in your heart, but with hope that peace can yet be born. Go knowing that love is not always soft and peace is not always passive. Go knowing that your faith calls you to build a world where dignity cannot be crushed and where evil does not get the final word. May you walk gently, speak truthfully, act boldly in the name of peace and the justice that makes it real. Please join me in extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish these flames, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you all for your presence here today. Go forth, do good, be peaceful. Thank you.